Let us recall that when we talked about method, we saw how economic science is constructed. To construct it, we begin with the analytically simplest phenomena. The simplest of all is the axiom of human action. Then we gradually introduce assumptions in our chain of logical deductive reasoning, and we arrive at more complex laws. Up to now, I have presented two basic laws on which we are going to construct the entire edifice of the theory of prices: marginal utility and diminishing marginal productivity. One for consumer goods, the other for factors of production. For when we study the theory of prices and factors of production, and now we're going to make an analytical leap to broaden our laws and make them more complex. Until now, we have imagined only one individual, isolated human actor, Robinson Crusoe on his island. To present these two laws, it is not necessary to bring in more people. When we construct economics, we start by supposing there is only one isolated human being, because that is the simplest approach, analytically speaking. We've studied human action, entrepreneurship, its components, the law of marginal utility, and the law of returns. Today, we're going to make a theoretical leap, and we're going to imagine Friday arrives on Robinson Crusoe's island, that there are two of them now, not just one. And why only two? There may be three, four of them. Perhaps a tribe shows up. We're now going to introduce action in the framework of society. We have already defined the concept of society. We saw that society is not anthropological, though it is often personified. An anthropological view of society is often presented. For example, Spain has decided, as if Spain had legs and a mind and made decisions. Or Germany declares war on Poland. It's a manner of speaking. Be careful. We very often commit this error of believing society speaks, thinks, wants, but that's not the way it is. Society is indeed a reality. It exists. It's there, but our mission is to understand what that reality consists of. We are social scientists. We face the biggest challenge. What is society? We've seen that society is an abstract concept. We cannot touch society. Come on, let's touch society, or ask society what it wants. We said that society is a process, and that a process is a dynamic structure comprised of elements. That society is a very complex or extremely complex process, because it is comprised of billions of elements, each of which is a human being, and each human being is a universe unto himself, because he is endowed with an innate creative capacity. We said that it is an extremely complex process, because it contains a huge number of elements. It is extremely complex from a quantitative standpoint, but also from a qualitative standpoint. Because a process, which in a dynamic structure is not only a mass of elements, but consists of interrelated elements. I gave the example of a Meccano set, a structure of different connected parts. As children, we all put together Meccano sets. We built structures with Lego, etc. Well, society is an extremely complex process of human interaction. And these relationships do not involve a physical connection between human beings via a wire, a tube, or a cord. These interactions are also spiritual relationships, which can only be interpreted in historical terms. They are human interactions, basically exchange relationships. Do ut des in Latin. I give you something, and you give me something in return. We make an exchange relationships. These exchange relationships conform to standards of pattern behavior, based on legal and moral principles. Many such relationships, but not all, are reflected in market prices, set in monetary units. We'll see the implications of this because it makes economic calculation possible. It permits us to keep books, to assess whether we've gained or lost with respect to the past, and to make plans and budgets for the future, to guide our action. What drives all of this extremely complex process that is society? What is the force behind society? We've said that it's entrepreneurship. It's the innate capacity of human beings to create information, transmit information, and coordinate. The entrepreneurial process continually creates, transmits, and coordinates. And this entrepreneurial process is competitive in the sense that human beings vie with each other in an attempt to accomplish our ends as soon as possible. And what did we say the result of all this was? Well, it's curious, because this whole mess I've just summed up has not been created by anyone. No ministry organizes it. It wasn't thought up by sages who told us, okay, now you come into the world and start making exchanges among yourselves. It emerged on its own. It's what is called a spontaneous order, which is economists' object of research. In fact, analysis enables us to understand how, when the attempt is made to improve this spontaneous order or achieve specific deliberate objectives in it, it is destroyed. This is the theorem of the impossibility of socialism, which we'll be studying in depth in this class. As social scientists, we discover the spontaneous order, and we are astonished that it has emerged, that it is perfected as it evolves, and that it is expanding without limit. The social, entrepreneurial Big Bang, the constant, limitless expansion of human creativity, knowledge, and information. Though the Big Bang continually generates new maladjustments, it also tends to coordinate previous ones. Furthermore, the great wonder that surprises us social scientists is that though no one has created the spontaneous order, which emerges on its own, it has a curious effect. It fuels life. It permits the sustenance of an ever-increasing number of human beings who live their lives with an ever-increasing richness and variety of nuances in qualitative terms. Thus, as scientists who are analyzing the process from the outside, we realize that the result, unsought by anybody but surprising, is that the process multiplies life. Therefore, society is not a place, nor is it a person. It is an abstract reality, which can only be interpreted if we first have the analytical tools we develop as economists. Society does not think. Society does not decide. The thinking, the deciding, and the acting are done by the elements, the billions of elements that make up the social process. Human beings, the men and women who make up the social process, but not society. It's an illusion. And a very dangerous one, to believe societies exist outside of the individuals who form them and who are capable of acting, because that's not the way it is. It is in statists' interest for human beings to commit the conceptual error of thinking in all-encompassing terms, as if society existed independently. Because statists want human beings to be subject to a superior will, which would be society. And that is in statists' interest, because all of the legitimacy of those who exercise power rests on keeping citizens convinced of the idea that they are, if you will, microscopic elements of a body that thinks and decides outside of them, and to which they must sacrifice themselves. And based on that, we understand the statements, Germany declared war on, or France and England declared war on Germany. Those are lies. Neither France nor England declared war on Germany. Certain specific people, and furthermore a very small minority, made such a declaration and signed a document to that effect. And all the people they sent to the trenches had nothing to do with it. They weren't involved. But they agreed to go based on that conceptual error. But it's all fiction. It does not correspond with reality, but it can have tragic effects if people believe it. It is the mission of social scientists to dispel this myth of the all-encompassing view of society. That's why Mises devotes so many pages of human action to debunking holism, or the all-encompassing view of society as if it were an anthropological being that decides, thinks, or acts outside of its members.